Weapons has to be the funniest movie of the year, and that is definitely something I didn't expect. So Weapons is the latest film from Zach Cregger, who of course gave us the surprise hit Barbarian back in 2022. Let me tell you, Barbarian was one of those movies where I was going to the screener and I was like, this is probably just going to be okay. I won't think about it, right? I was very excited though once I got to the screener and I saw that it was directed by Zach Cregger, because I've been a fan of Zach Cregger for a long time now. Whitest Kids You Know, all the way back. Miss March, Trevor Moore, Zach Cregger, Whitest Kids You Know were definitely a big part of me growing up. And so when I saw that it was Zach Cregger, I was like, okay, this could be interesting. All up until that point, I knew was that Georgina Campbell and Bill Skarsgård were in it, and I didn't know where this was going. And I tell you, when I saw Barbarian and that immediate twist happens, I was just like, yeah, I'm locked in. And the rest of the film, up until now, I consider it one of the best horror films we've gotten in the past decade. So when I heard Cregger was doing yet another horror film and that a bidding war had started over it, it was going to be an epic horror story, I was so drawn into it. And the energy last night at the screening by everybody else was felt. Everybody was ready to see what the hell happened to those 17 kids at 2:17 a.m. And I'm here to tell you that this movie rules. It rules on so many levels. There's so many amazing parts in it that I want to talk about, but I don't want to give spoilers. Wait for that video tomorrow where we're going to get into spoilers. And I just really love what Cregger did here. Something so unique and something I think was needed in the horror genre. Because this movie, it is at its core a horror movie, a mystery thriller of sorts, but I think it's much more than that. There's so much drama in it. There's so much comedy. The comedy is top tier as well. I think, of course, Cregger coming from a comedy background really adds to this. And I think with movies and horror and all of that, I think there is always a comedic side to a lot of these things. And I think Cregger presents it here in a way where it makes sense. The all-star cast here of Julia Garner, Josh Brolin, you have Benedict Wong, Alden Ehrenreich, Austin Abrams, and some other ones in here as well. They all do an exceptional job. This movie is sort of like Pulp Fiction, Magnolia with a horror twist on it. And I really do love that here, because you get all of these different perspectives, all that pretty much lead to the same destination. Like, you take these different routes and you see the routes throughout different perspectives of these characters and how different they are. And that's more to the themes, I think, of the America we live in today, which I want to talk about in the spoiler video tomorrow, because I think that's what Cregger really is getting at here, in my opinion, but more on that tomorrow. And this cast is so great throughout, because they all are exhibiting these very difficult emotions of this tragedy that has struck this town, and they all do it in a way where it feels natural. These characters don't feel just like stock characters. They feel like actual human beings, which is kind of hard to do when it comes to a film that has so many of these characters taking center stage for a lot of portions of it, because it is divided into each of these characters' perspectives. But I think Cregger is able to really capture who these characters are in the short amount of time they get to be in the spotlight. And the movie basically comes to a big conclusion once all of these roads intersect with one another. And I think it is just a epic finale, honestly. Like, you are not ready for that finale. People were hooting and hollering throughout the whole screening during these last 20 minutes. And it was just one of the greatest moments of watching a movie this year. Just the excitement, the amount of like, oh shit, things are going down, was just incredible to see with a packed audience. And I'm very curious to see how people are going to sort of come off with that ending, because that ending was definitely twisted and insane. So very excited to hear more thoughts on it from others once they get to watch it. Now, I do think Cregger does kind of tone down, I would feel, the dread and horror from Barbarian in this movie, and kind of leans heavier into the drama and comedy than in Barbarian. Because Barbarian, yes, it did have its very funny moments, but I think that it was a lot more leaning towards horror. And that was one of the things I think kind of caught me off guard with Weapons, is I don't think it was as horrific or as scary as I was envisioning in my head. And that's always my fault sometimes with expectations, right? And I think we all do that. I think that I do enjoy Barbarian a little bit more when it comes to the horror aspect of it, but I do see Cregger here having more ambitious and sort of like trying to take it in a different direction. And I always will appreciate that even more, because I like that Cregger is sort of pushing himself. This is a much more cast dense film than Barbarian, where you had about maybe 5 or 6 characters throughout. This has a ton of characters all interacting, different locations and things like that. This is a much bigger film than Barbarian, and that's what I think was a big challenge for Cregger here, is you see him jumping from a smaller project like Barbarian into a larger epic horror that is Weapons. And I do think he does an incredible job at balancing all of these characters and all of these ideas that he is showcasing throughout, the themes and everything as well, which I will talk about tomorrow. And that was sort of a beautiful thing to see Cregger do here, but I think also it's the weakest part of the film is there's so much going on that sometimes you just don't know how much you can feel for a character, because you start to really get into this character and what they're going through and their feelings and things like that, but then you're immediately drawn back and taken to another character, so you're just like, oh, okay, so I gotta abandon that for now. And I don't know if the movie would have worked more if it didn't have that sort of like different plots going on and then they're immediately all gonna culminate into one final destination instead of just being more linear. I think maybe that could have worked a little bit better for the film, but that's just my opinion right there. That was the only gripe I had with the movie, was I think that breaking the stories up and making them all lead to one conclusion kind of like derailed the film a bit and gave it too many pauses and stops where I was just like, okay. And you know, it works in a lot of other movies, but I just don't know if it worked here with Weapons. But I still really enjoyed the movie minus those things. I think that the scares here are great. There's a lot of atmosphere building here that Cregger does that I just don't think we see in movies today, especially horror movies, be done well. I don't think a lot of horror movies do this anymore, where they really go forth and build an atmosphere that just makes you feel so unsettled and creeped out. And Cregger does this beautifully in Barbarian and continues to do it here with Weapons. Like, there were so many moments where there's just these very quiet scenes that are just like, sometimes there's not even a noise heard in the background or things like that, but the images that Cregger puts on the screen for you, and when the noises come in and the sound, it is just unbelievable. I really do love it. There is a scare that comes sort of in the first 30 to 40 minutes of the film that I was just like so creeped out by, and I'm thinking about it right now and I'm kind of creeped out about it as well. So I think Cregger really is a great horror filmmaker, and I'm excited to see if he continues to be in the horror genre with his next project, because I think he has a lot to say and do with it. But it's still, Weapons was great, honestly. Comedy wise, Cregger comes from a comedy background, Widest Kids You Know, and I think that we definitely see it shine here. It really does shine in that third act, because Cregger has a little bit in there that it just kept going and going, and it's something where if you do it at a bad timing or don't do it right, it can kind of get annoying and tedious, and it is a very fine balance, and you'll know which scene I'm talking about because I think Cregger executed that very well, because everybody in the theater, including myself, were just cracking up, and it is so great to see it in a part that's meant to be a little bit serious and is a little bit dangerous as well for the actors, but you're just can't help to laugh at the situation because it is just that ridiculous. But I think Cregger pulled it off in a way where we were just like, yeah, I get it. So overall, like I said, I think the film is great. It has great horror in it. The scares are really amplified by the atmosphere that he builds brilliantly at the beginning of the film. The comedy is just the right amount, and it is really well done and timed well, where it's executed perfectly in my opinion, and is just one of the funniest movies of the year. I still hold on to that. I think the story is really interesting as well. There's a lot of building this world here and also some of the characters, but I do think that is where the movie starts to get a little bit shaky and derailed, is when the story starts to really pause too much and go through all of these characters almost in emotion. It can kind of pull you out and you're just there like, okay, now who's next? Now, who are we going to watch next? And it can work at times, but I think by the third or fourth character, it was just like, okay. Instead, I think the movie really would have worked more if it was just linear, in my opinion. If it works for you in the way it was done, kudos to you as well, but that's just my opinion, my thoughts on it. Really love Weapons. I still think it's one of the movies you got to check out in theaters. That ending is insane. It really is a brutal ending, I will tell you that, so be warned about that. But overall, I'm excited. Lived up to my expectations and more, and I'm excited to see more Cregger in the future. But let me know what you think about Weapons in the comments down below. Make sure you follow us for all things you love, our spoilers and talk and all of that tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. As always, stay safe, stay positive.